Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Lights Camera Discussion Podcast. My name is Massey903, and as always, I am joined here today by the almost twins, like an adaptation, collective unit, and Todorov. Guys, how are we doing today?
Morning, mate. How are you? I'm all good.
Excellent. Todd, you all right?
Yeah, absolutely sound. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Which one's Charlie? Which one's Donald? Is it Donald? Donald.
We'll get into that when we discuss adaptation.
Yeah, well, you can make that decision once we've talked about them. Yeah,
Sounds good. Perfect. Okay, so before we kind of get into this episode, which of course is going to be on Spike Jonze, I just want to say thank you, of course, for everyone that watches and listens to our previous episodes. And again, if you're watching and listening just now, remember to give us a like, subscribe, and follow us as well. Your support means the world to us. So thank you so much. Right, let us get into this episode, which we're all absolutely buzzing for, and really excited to talk about all the different types of films here. Today, we're going to be talking about Spike Jonze. So, it was my choice, so I'll just give everyone a bit of an overview on Mr. Spike Jonze. This is something, again, that I wrote myself in plenty of time, not on the day. So, Adam Spiegel, known professionally as Spike Jonze, is an American filmmaker, actor, musician, and photographer. His work includes films, commercials, music videos, skateboard videos, and television. Once Jonze moved into feature films, he collaborated with screenwriter Charlie Kaufman, and their partnership led into a successful run with many nominations for Academy Awards. And out with his films, Jonze is also known for being an executive producer and sometimes on-screen talent with Jackass. He's also known for his music videos, working with acts like the Beastie Boys, Weezer, Kanye West, and Daft Punk. A very talented guy with a lot of different strings in his bows, you could say there. So, yeah, as I said, we're going to be talking about Spike Jonze. We're going through his filmography. So, Being John Malkovich, Adaptation, Where the Wild Things Are, and then finally, Her. So, guys, how about we just get straight into this then?
sounds good.
Yeah, all good.
Great. Okay, so the first film that we are going to be speaking about is Being John Malkovich, released in 1999. It's about a puppeteer discovers a portal that leads directly into the head of movie star John Malkovich. So, as always, first thoughts on this film, Collie?
Watching it, or rewatching it rather, for the podcast, it was the first time in a while that I'd seen it. I watched it on the train when I was going down to London the other week, so it was good because you could kind of just lock in and watch it, and it's just mental. I think I'm going to say this about all of the films, but it's so out there and bizarre, but the performances shine through. And like I say, that's probably a line I'm going to be repeating for all four of the films that we're going to discuss today. But love it. Such a good film.
Good stuff. Todd?
Yeah, it's a rewatch for me, but like Collie, I haven't watched it in a long time. Yeah, love it. It's weird, but it's the right level of weird. It's meta, but the right level of meta. It's performances are brilliant, but the execution's good as well. And I think where we will be saying that a lot of other films are weird, I think the execution tips every now and then. Where for this, it's spot on.
Good stuff.
What were you, Massey?
Yeah, same. I remember, it's not a rewatch for me as such, but I remember when I was like younger, it came on, I think on the TV on like Sky Cinema or something, and I was totally weirded out by it, so I turned it off after like 15-20 minutes. So it was interesting going through and watching the whole film, but like you guys say, it's got a level to it which is quite interesting to see the level of weird that it goes to, and yeah, I thought it was a really, really good watch, a really sort of fun watch. So I mean, as we do on each episode, we'll discuss a bit about the performances. I know you guys sort of hinted on the fact that they kind of shine through when watching the film. So of course, the film is sort of started. The main character of the film is Mr. John Cusack, playing like a sort of sad sack, long-haired, greasy puppeteer sort of guy. What were your thoughts on his performance then, Colin? If you want to start us off again.
I thought John Cusack was brilliant in this. We'll probably get on to the awards nominated and stuff later on, but the fact he wasn't nominated for Best Actor kind of surprised me. I think he's just brilliant of playing that sad sack, like you're saying, and the kind of relationships that he develops and this infatuation with Maxine, and how he just kind of I mean, well, first and foremost, I forgot Cameron Diaz was in this. It doesn't even look like Cameron Diaz as you remember in like that kind of time period and all that. So when we get onto her, we can discuss that more. But I thought their relationship was good. Yeah, I loved him. Loved him in loads of stuff, but this is probably like top tier John Cusack for me.
Todd?
Yeah, it's a brilliant performance for me. Like, even when he's playing like in High Fidelity, where he's a bit of a miserable twat, like he's still got a bit of charisma about him. He's still got something about him. Like he is pure sad sack in this, and it, like you say, with Cameron Diaz, and I think you can't talk about without talking about them as a pair almost. Like they never look like this. They never appear like this. And like I need to rewatch it again at some point because now I want to tick it off, but. He's never like stood up straight. I know, obviously, with the 7.5 floor, he's like he has to crouch over. But even like in his apartment, he's always still got that slump about him. Like it's doing me head in just doing it for like 30 seconds now. So I don't know how he did it for like the film of the full thing. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant, and like I love the sort of the mad side of him. I thought he did that very well. Like as he slowly starts to lose his mind, that he can't have the relationship with his wife's fractured. He can't have the woman that he loves or that he's infatuated with at work. He can't even have his business idea because now that's been taken over. Like, and you just slowly start to see him unravel. I thought he was brilliant with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think you're right that his descent into the kind of it's hard to call it love because obviously it's quite a one-sided sort of relationship he kind of has with like some Maxine and stuff, but his descent into that kind of obsession over her and obsession over the the portal and stuff as well. I just think he plays it so well, and it is such an interesting out of character performance. It's really interesting the way you said there, but obviously thinking about him and Cameron Diaz as like a sort of think of them similar because they're kind of like the same character but in two performances. Like they have that same sort of arc where they both start to fall for Maxine, which was a super interesting way of doing it, especially with an actor like Cameron Diaz, who was a couple like 3-4 years prior made her debut in The Mask, and it was like known as like this sort of like heartthrob kind of, or not heartthrob, that's more a male thing, isn't it? But like known as this like beautiful woman, and to see her in this sort of situation was an interesting sort of like turn of events. Colin, what were your thoughts on Cameron Diaz and her performance as Lottie?
Yeah, it was just completely against type, like I said. And great point about discussing them as a pair as this kind of grotty living with a chimpanzee couple, which is completely bizarre. But yeah, their battle throughout the film, and then at the end of the culmination of the film about who's going to get Maxine, it is brilliant. And Cameron Diaz and Catherine Keener, even though like there's probably not that much interaction between them later on in the film, that it's not like one of them in Lottie and Malkovich interacting with Maxine. That scene where they're in the apartment with John Cusack, and it's Diaz, Cusack, and Keener, like the first time that they interact as a three, is brilliant. And yeah, just a surprising performance. Like I said, I forgot she was in it, and a definite standout.
Absolutely. So we've touched on there on obviously the focus of their obsession, Catherine Keener as Maxine. Personally, it was sort of like a strange performance for like seeing her, because I know her from obviously like Get Out and things like that, and seeing her as like the sort of like love interest is not something I've seen personally of her before. Todd, what were your thoughts on Catherine Keener's performance as Maxine and the sort of almost the MacGuffin in this film, isn't she? You're on mute.
Muted, sorry. She's so effortlessly like cool, but also like cold as well. Like I know they're very similar in some sense, but like she, on the 7.5 floor where her and John Cusack are talking, and like I said, he's like bent over and double. You couldn't tell that she was in a floor with lower ceilings because she's like lent, and like all I knew her from when I watched this the first time was 40-Year-Old Virgin, where she was the love interest, but she was also like really down to earth and really caring and like a real person, where she's just a bit of a like I say, cold is the word for her in this. And like I said, I'd never seen it from her before. I thought she was amazing. Like, she's just the game player. And probably my favourite performance in the film. Like, in a film that is, like, just amazing performances all over the place. Like, she just plays everybody like a fiddle. And when that first time where she realises it's Lottie... No, not where she realises, where she acknowledges that it's Lottie in John Malkovich. Like, where they just sat on the couch and then all of a sudden she's on top of him. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah, she was class. Collie, what about you?
Yeah, I thought she was great. She did get nominated for the Oscar for this, which I thought was well deserved. Just talking about the Get Out, and that's what you recognise her from. There was a bit on IMDb that I noted down that there's fan theories suggesting that Catherine Keener reprises her role 18 years later, and Alison Williams plays the grown-up Emily. Jordan Peele says it's interesting, but it's not the way that he obviously wrote it or whatever. But I thought that was an interesting concept. But no, back to Keener. I think that just the way that she plays off John Cusack, especially early on when they go to the bar and that, and she's like, well, no, I don't think it's at the bar. I think it's when she first meets him. She's like, you wouldn't even know what to do with me if you got me, kind of thing. I thought that was brilliant. And then when he's explaining to her about the whole portal, and he's like, oh, like, you can get in Malkovich, and then she's just like, who the fuck is John Malkovich? I just thought she was so blasé, and like you say, just cool, just a really cool character. And yeah, again, the culmination of how it's all rectified at the end, that she's with Lottie and Cusack has to watch them be happily ever after, was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on obviously Kathleen Keener stuff there, so let's move on to the sort of like the main guy. Well, not the main guy in the story, but the person who sees the story from his eyes quite a lot of the time. But John Malkovich is like a kind of turned up to 11 version of himself. What do I think of him as the kind of the point of view and our sort of the person that we see a lot of the sort of story from in his eyes. So, Colin, what was your thoughts on John Malkovich in being John Malkovich?
I thought he was class, and when you look at some of the behind the scenes stuff, when he's like, because I think he spoke to Charlie Kaufman about it like 5 or 6 years prior, and he's like, please take me out of it. Like, why does it have to be me, kind of thing? But obviously, like, long story short, he obviously accepted the fact that he was going to have a film written about him. And he just fully leans into it. He just goes completely up to 11, like you say. There's a couple of the scenes. It's when the guy goes into the restaurant that I find, like, if we're going to talk more about like Spike Jonze's interaction, the guy that he's talking to in the restaurant, he asked that guy, I can't remember the character or the actor, but he asks him to use the R word as much as possible, and he didn't tell John Malkovich that's what he was going to do. So the fact that John Malkovich can just hit his stride with that and just act his way through it and just go for it, I thought was brilliant. One of the funniest bits, like story-wise, about him was when him and Maxine are having sex on like the couch, or I think it's a couch, but it's John Cusack's character inside him, and he's fighting against. He's like, I didn't say that, and the confusion that he portrays is brilliant, and you can even tell like when different people are inside him, he's playing it differently. And then there's kind of probably one of the more iconic scenes in the film is when he's inside himself. Yeah. And everyone's just saying Malkovich, and everybody's obviously like with John Malkovich's head and stuff. Just iconic. And it's funny. I don't think when I seen this for the first time, I'd seen him in anything like prior to this. So anything that he's been in like after this, I feel like he's just, oh, that's John Malkovich. He's kooky, he's weird. Whereas when you watch him in his earlier career, he is quite a quote unquote like serious actor. But after this, he just, any character he plays, whether it's in Red or anything like that, it's just John Malkovich in being John Malkovich, but just kooky and weird, and his voice is just iconic. Yeah, I love him in this. I'm so glad we got to watch this mainly for him. I wouldn't say he's like the best performance in it, but yeah, anything with him in it's just a laugh. It's just silly.
Absolutely. Todd?
I only knew him as Cyrus the Virus. That was my sort of entry level John Malkovich. But like you say, the scene where it's all the Malkoviches, and it's when the waiter, like, you can tell what they're saying even though they're just saying. So the waiter like goes, Malkovich, the actual John Malkovich screams and he goes, Malkovich. And like, what? So I thought it was brilliant. It's delivery of like specific lines. So like you say, when he's playing John Cusack inside John Malkovich and he's like, it looks good, I'd fuck me, or something along them lines. That was brilliant. But yeah, like you say, he leans into it. And I wrote down about like, how did John Malkovich ever sign off and get involved? Like that conversation and that understanding that like Kaufman's gone to him with this script. It's not like a sort of a chat that they've had where they're developing it together or whatever. Is wild. But I just, after John Malkovich falls out of his own head portal, whatever, and he slaps his head and goes, "It's my head, Schwartz." Like, I lost it. Like both times watching it, I lost my shit. Just that slap on his butt. But Catherine Keener does it. Sorry, just go back to her. When they're having sex on the couch, she's fucking just smacking the top of his head. What's this film? And what is this like? Obviously, classically trained, really big actor doing. And he must have had a good time. And like you say, he's not the best thing in it, but he's one of the most fun things about it. He's brilliant. And the dance of despair that Malkovich does with John Cusack, I thought was brilliant as well, with that bed sheet wrapped around him. It was a brilliant performance. It was class.
Absolutely. And I loved when like John Cusack was in Malkovich towards the end, like for like a sustained amount of time, and he even like grew like the longer hair and like even started looking like sad sack John Cusack and stuff as well. I think that's absolutely class. It was interesting what you said there, Colin, about the interaction that he had when he maybe didn't know personally what was going on, sort of thing. But there was another moment as well where it's like one of like the all-time iconic sort of ad-lib kind of things, but when he's walking down the highway and there's two folk in the car that drive past and lob like a beer can at his head, that was like actually just people that drove on the set. Like it wasn't actually actors, and he just absolutely rolled with it. Yeah. Again, I think that's just absolutely class that he's able to sort of do that, and I think it just shows how much he sort of invested in the film as well, like emotionally as well as physically and stuff as well.
Yeah, I took a note actually on that the can throwing scene. It says the scene when a can's thrown at Malkovich's head's real. Malkovich described how Spike Jonze wanted to cut it due to running that late that night, expecting that no one would be able to hit him on the head with a half full can of beer from a passing car. When about 70 or 80 sets of hands shot up on the crew saying they would like to try, eventually the task fell to John Cusack's writing partner, and he nailed it on the first try.
Oh right. So it wasn't. Yeah, I maybe misremembered it then, but that's still interesting. To the fact that
loads of people on the crew were like, "I want to give that a go."
Yeah. It's quite a target, though. To be fair,
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought, as you say, so much fun watching him do loads of different stuff, and it was really interesting to see. In terms of the performances, that was kind of obviously the main sort of like group for me. I don't know, was there any other ones that you wanted to talk about that maybe like turned up, or that kind of had little bits and pieces? Todd,
sorry, Dr. Lester for me had me in tears on like I just found myself rewinding it to like make sure I got the quote written down, because I was like, when he's talking to the secretary or the executive assistant, whatever he calls her, and he's like, "I'm not banging her, if that's what you're implying." And then he said about when he's talking about like eating carrots or drinking carrot juice, and he says, "And I have to piss sitting down like a goddamn girly girl every 15 minutes." Like it felt. Have you ever seen the Monty Python sketch where the mountaineer's blind and he has to put his hand over his eye and he's like seeing two versions of every? It felt like that Monty Python sketch where like he's talking to him about his really bad speech impediment with no speech like that, and obviously that's Kaufman's writing, but it's his delivery. That timing is absolutely perfect every time. So yeah, Dr. Lester was one for me that just like made the film just that bit more entertaining. Like, it was a great film anyway, but like just made it that bit more funny.
Absolutely. Collie?
Yeah, Dr. Lester's who I noted down that I wanted to talk about, and one of the quotes I wrote down was when he says, "Flores, get Guinness on the phone right away, Dr. Lester. Genghis Khan Capone." Like, just her misunderstanding of his lines, and Schwartz is just like, "You don't have a speech impediment." He's like, "That's very nice of you to say, but it's fine," kind of thing. Yeah, and then the pop up of Charlie Sheen as Malkovich's IRL friend, I thought was quite bizarre. But yeah, Dr. Lester was the one that I noted down that I wanted to quickly mention.
Absolutely. So I mean, let's kind of discuss a bit about well, I suppose we'll probably maybe talk a bit about the script, the collaborator of Spike Jonze, Charlie Kaufman, and I know Todd, you spoke there about the Kaufman's writing for Dr. Lester. Was there any sort of other bits and pieces that you guys maybe that stood out for yourself, like writing wise? Anything that maybe was done well that you thought from the from a script point of view at all, Collie?
It's just a really snappy script. I mean, I've got nothing particularly to say, but it just flows so well. It's believable in a way, which is kind of weird to say about what the kind of the premise of the film is. But just a lot of the conversations seem quite natural, especially between Cameron Diaz and Cusack early on about struggles that couples have, and even I think there's some of their first interactions when she's like, "Oh, you've got to look after the chimp or whatever." I can't remember the chimp's name. And he's like, "Oh, what one's that again?" And she's like, "It's the chimp." It's just simple stuff like that. I just think it's really, really snappy, and kind of what Todd said at the beginning. It's like it's meta, but it's not too meta. The fact that it's got like real people playing like weird versions of themselves in Malkovich obviously leans into that a lot more in the next film we'll discuss. But yeah, just really quick, snappy, and you can kind of see that throughout his writing stuff, like Eternal Sunshine, which obviously we're not going to talk about today. But when you're just looking through what he's worked on, and then when he starts directing stuff like Anomalisa, there's a reason Kaufman's revered as this, top tier writer. Yeah, I thought it was great. There's nothing like I say, like particularly I noted down. I just thought it flowed really quickly, and the entertaining part was the kind of Dr. Lester comedic breaks, I guess. Like, what is it? Is he not challenge John Cusack to a fight at one point or something like that? About, is it Keener or something like that? I'm sure he says fisticuffs or something like that. It's just silly stuff. And obviously he just got Orson Bean to play Dr. Lester perfectly, and all that is script work.
Yeah, absolutely. Todd, anything script wise, writing wise, what to
Well,
discuss?
I think for me, like say the Dr. Lester stuff is the most it's a really good script. I agree with Collie about it, like being sharp and snappy like that. But the Dr. Lester stuff wouldn't be amiss in like Airplane. Like it's that level of parody, it's that level of silly, but like it works here. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't take it out of it. It doesn't sort of like it doesn't feel out of place. And I think that's to the script's credit that like it works really well. But yeah, I think I've covered most of like the script because it is just natural, snappy. I think,
Yeah, absolutely. I would just say as well, I think that like the sort of like underlying themes of like addiction and like stuff like that as well, or like like kind of like the sort of maybe misplaced lust and stuff as well, I think was really interesting in terms of the script and that as well. So but yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a really interesting script and is unlike anything there's ever been before as well. So it's really interesting to have watched. We can discuss a little bit about the actual director, Spike Jonze, the person that we're going to be speaking about in this whole thing as well. Was there anything creatively you thought that he had maybe had a hand in that worked well? Was there any sort of like cinematography choices that was something that stood out for you guys? Todd, do you want to? Is there anything at all?
The one thing I've got written down was the like the extreme close up on John Cusack's mouth when he's guessing the Maxine's name, and he's just like making those sounds with his mouth. That is one of the most uncomfortable things I've seen on a film. Like it was horrible. Like I don't know what it was about it. It really like knocked me west. But I thought it was effective because it's like I don't know if you feel the same. It had this sort of like nightmarish quality about it. Like especially that. No, the whole film did. I was about to say the opening bit. The whole film felt like a really fucking weird nightmare. And like that just sort of turned it up for me. The the puppeteering as well. When the priest and like the nun or whatever, those puppets, and they start like grinding. Like it was like, I think it says a lot about the character that he's making these puppets do these things. And that bloke's pissed off that his daughter's watching, which I thought again was brilliant. Sorry, that's back to script, but like just focusing on the puppeteering and stuff, because I thought it was going to be like heavy puppeteering. I thought, like, the first time I watched it, I thought we're going to get a lot of this here, and it wasn't. But when it was used really well. Just to show how much of a weirdo John Cusack was.
But I suppose technically we did get a lot of puppeteering because there's people puppeteering John Malkovich.
John Malkovich. I was about to say John Cusack. There's too many Johns.
I know. Collie?
Yeah, I was just going to mention the shooting of the puppeteering, and especially the opening scene of it. And because it had been so long since I'd watched it, I was like, I was good, not all of it, but I was like, is a lot of this in puppeteering, and I can't remember it properly or whatever. But just the flashes of it when he's on the street, and then even later on when he's directing Malkovich, when Malkovich is doing the puppeteering, he's got the massive puppeteering, like, I can't remember what they're called. Not the marionettes are the puppets, are they, or whatever? But do you know the thing, the hand controls that he's got, and he's just got the massive ones when he's on top of the theater and stuff. I thought it was like silly and funny, but it wasn't like laugh out loud funny. That it was just like directorial like flourishes of, this is kind of weird. This is like you should be like half smiling, laughing at this kind of stuff. But yeah, the puppeteering was what I had noted down was probably my favorite part of the direct, like, cinematography type directing parts of the film.
Absolutely. Okay, was there anything else you guys want to go over with being John Malkovich? Was there anything?
I just had like 2 bits of trivia that I noted down. Was that originally it was considered for Christopher Walken when Kaufman was writing it, and I think that would have been class as well, because Christopher Walken playing him or being inside his head would have been just wild. And then just not a bit of nepotism, but we'll maybe talk more nepotism in the next film. But got a note that Kaufman sent the script to Francis Ford Coppola, showed it to his daughter and her husband, who at the time was Spike Jonze. So that's how it kind of all got connected to how Kaufman and Spike Jonze got in contact, was that it was through Francis Ford Coppola, which I thought was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, shall we discuss what we rated it on Letterboxd then? Todd, what did you give Being John Malkovich on Letterboxd?
4.5.
Collie?
5 out of 5 for me.
Fair enough. I give it 4.5 as well. Yeah, brilliant film. Right, okay, let us move on to the next film in Spike Jonze's filmography. We're on to Adaptation. So a lovelorn screenwriter becomes desperate as he tries and fails to adapt The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean for the screen. First thoughts, Collie?
So it's normally like the third or fourth film of a director's filmography when we're talking about these on the podcast that I'm like, oh, they disappear up their bum a little bit. I feel that Charlie Kaufman and Spike Jonze kind of did in this already. Overall, I liked the film. I really enjoyed it, but what I liked about the film was pretty much purely the performances. I didn't really like the storytelling aspect of it. I thought it was a bit too meta. I thought it was a bit too, oh, well, you know, like, I don't know. It just a bit, yeah, up its own arse, I guess is the best way to describe it. So, yeah, that's my initial thoughts on it.
Todd?
Yeah, I can't get away with this film. I rewatched it in a sort of like, am I too thick to understand this? Excuse me. Like I looked at it, think, yeah, possibly. And like,
no, I was more thinking about. I was like, yeah, well,
you're like,
anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, you are. No, like it. I like the score that I gave it is purely for the performances, because there's some. It's like performance after performance. There's some really good ones, but fuck me, like I'll never watch this film again. And after I'd rated it and watched it, I cannot believe how highly people rate it. It just baffles me, because I thought, shit.
Maybe you are too dumb. Maybe that's
what. Yeah, that's what it is.
And I think I speak for all three of us before you get onto your thoughts, Massey. I was like, like halfway through watching this, I was like, why is Massey chosen Spike Jonze? This is like far too like difficult to understand for me. Anyway, Massey, sorry. What's your thoughts on this?
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, I actually thought myself, why the fuck did I choose Spike Jonze? No, yeah, it was such a strange film. Like it felt messy, in the way that being John Malkovich felt like it had a sort of purpose to it. Adaptation didn't. It was just meta for the sake of meta, and then like it was super messy. I'm exactly the same as you guys. I think the performances, or some of the performances, were really really good, and were the reason that I kept watching. If I was going to be watching it and it wasn't as good performances, I probably would have turned it off. But yeah, I think it's such a strange film, but not in the way that being John Malkovich was strange good. I feel like this was less sort of like, it was more just strange, and a weird sort of yeah, like I say, a bit of a mess at points. So I can't wait for us all to speak about this. Let's spend 20 minutes on the performances and then just 1 minute on our final thoughts. But obviously, of course, the main performance, the main actor in this is Nicolas Cage as the Kaufman brothers. What were your thoughts on Nicolas Cage's performance, Collie?
It's pure Nick Cage, but not Nick Cage of maybe like the mid 2000s to maybe the mid 2010s or whatever, of just being completely over the top. I think he's brilliant in this. I thought he was so good. It's kind of what he's coming back to in his career nowadays. I feel that he's kind of reined it in a little bit, but he's still quirky Nick Cage. He's still got all these kind of over the top facial expressions, and kind of similar to when we're talking about John Cusack in Being John Malkovich. It was kind of strange for Nick Cage to be playing this kind of sad sack guy with this obviously prosthetic fat belly on, and then this back and forth with the twin and stuff. I thought he was brilliant, and this was like around the time that he was in, I don't know year wise, but it's the same year as like Gone in 60 Seconds and stuff, when he's this like really really cool dude. The fact that he decided to do this, there must be something to do with the family relation there, because obviously Spike Jonze and Sophia were married at this time. Sophia's Nick's cousin, I think. I think he's
Yeah,
nephew of
yeah,
Francis Ford
yeah.
Coppola. So yeah, a bit of familial ties in regards to that. But no, I thought he was brilliant. I unironically like love Nick Cage, even when he is ridiculously bad, because I think that's funny. But when he's good, he's good. You know, and this is definitely one in the good column for me.
Yep. Todd?
Yeah, like when people say Nick Cage is a bad actor, like I think it's fine to say you don't like him as an actor, because I do think there's moments where I've hated performances, but like this shows that he is a good actor. Do you know what I mean? I think it was brilliant, and it's with the prosthetics, and you could tell the difference between the brothers. But I think you could tell the difference between them when like even without the prosthetics, even without like, do you know what I mean? Just from his performance. I love Donald. Like I thought he was like that first moment where we see him. Like I thought it wasn't a real brother at first. Like I thought it was like a part of his subconscious, because he's like laid on the floor like patting his belly, then he's like crawling around and shit. And I was like, is this like a dream? Like because obviously with the way Kaufman is, but yeah, and like just the way that they talk different, like just that little bit of phrasing that was different, the way they interact with people differently. You know, Maggie Gyllenhaal didn't really have a lot to do, so I don't know if we'll touch on it too much. But like the way that like Donald interacts with her, in comparison to Charlie, I thought was really cool. Yeah, it was a great performance, and like I say, it was probably like it's one of those that I wish I would want to go back to, if that makes sense. Like if this performance was in a different film, I would love to rewatch it, because it was brilliant.
Yep.
Massey?
Yeah, totally. I think the distinction between the two brothers, Charlie and Donald, I thought he played that so well. Like you can tell they're like completely separate people. And even when it comes to when they're discussing like the movie script and like how to like kind of move the story on and stuff as well. And the interaction between himself, it didn't feel like it was, he was doing one part and then one part. Like sometimes in films like that, where it's like an actor playing two, like, or interacting with himself in two different roles, you can tell that happens, but you don't in this one. I think it's really well done in the way that he embodies each character but then interact with himself seamlessly as well. I think that was it's a phenomenal way of um of doing it. I thought he was fantastic. I'm not really, again, with Nick Cage, like I'm not. I don't love him as much as you guys obviously seem like kind of do. Like I do quite like his performance sometimes. Sometimes he can be a bit of a parody of himself. But certainly when he like does it, when he kind of goes sort of straight, I suppose, and a bit serious, like you can tell that he's such a good actor, and like that's where his kind of where a lot of his like gravitas comes from. I think he's great when he does. Not he's not great in things like the Gone in 60 Seconds and stuff, but when he does stuff like that, it just reminds you of how good he is, and like yeah, I thought he was absolutely fantastic in this performance. Moving on to kind of
I
the
wouldn't even. Sorry, just I wouldn't even say I love him. Like as in, Kick-Ass. I fucking hate. I love that film. I fucking hate him in that film.
Oh really?
I can't stand him.
Wow.
I know. It's a hot take. Is that like a hot?
Yeah.
Is that a big? Is that a thing?
Not
But
a
like,
hot take. I just think that you could get that animated about Kick-Ass, and anyway, yeah.
yeah, like yeah, can't bear him in it. Whereas stuff like obviously there's Pig and like that kind of thing. Obviously Con Air, where he's a very different version of Nick Cage, where he's brilliant. But there's moments where like honestly, I think you've ruined this for me.
What's your thoughts on Nick Cage and Long Legs?
So I really liked him, and I know the general feeling of Long Legs in here is not a high one, but yeah, like that for me was like peak ridiculous Nick Cage, but it deserved it. It like it where he needs to be that sort of screechy, over the top, high pitch, like he's off the wall.
Yeah,
Whereas
about Long Legs, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. We're never gonna just a spoiler for the next however many episodes. We never do an Osgood Perkins episode.
Oh yeah.
Well, unless the monkey film's good. I'm intrigued by the monkey film.
Does look cool.
But then they'll say that's the scariest film since Child's Play or something, and you're like, for fuck's sake. just on that note, there's people say that about Nosferatu, like, the scariest film since The Shining or something. I'm like, why have you said that?
Let's be
Why
careful.
have you said that?
I prefer when they call it the
trusting
horniest
of
film.
beggars. Yeah, I'm all for that. all for the horniness.
Back to Spike Jonze.
Shit, sorry.
So the next sort of character that we've got that we sort of follow is Meryl Streep as the author Susan Orlean. Todd, what were your thoughts on Meryl Streep's performance in this?
I thought she was fine. I thought out of the main cast and knowing what Meryl Streep can do, I thought she was just fine. I found her to be a bit, but again, I don't think the script gave her a lot to play with. Like the dial tone scene, where she's like high, and she's trying to make a dial tone with Chris Cooper. What the fuck? Well, like, come on. Like I was looking, Meryl, you're better than this. Like I say, it wasn't a bad performance by any stretch of the imagination. I believed her. I loved the moment where they're in the swamp, the jungle type thing, and she sees the ghost orchid, and she's like, it's a flower, and like you just feel that energy drop out of her. I thought that was brilliant. But that's one scene in a film where she's in it quite a bit, and I just thought she does so much better. Like we know she's one of the greats. But yeah, for me, wasn't. Yeah, she was good, and I loved the interactions with her and Chris Cooper, and how he sort of took her out of herself a little bit, and how she changed with him. But there wasn't anything for me that stood out where I was like, "This is the performance of the film." There were a couple of more people, even in smaller roles, that I felt I got more out of. Colin?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I don't know if it's just this period of where our career was, because obviously, like, in her younger career, she was brilliant in, like, Sophie's Choice and Kramer versus Kramer, Deer Hunter, stuff like that. And that was, like, 70s, early 80s. And then throughout the 90s and stuff, she was in bits and pieces. And then for me, when I was looking through her, like, filmography, it's not until Devil Wears Prada again, probably, that's when she's brilliant. And I think that's because she's become like an older woman in the sense of her career. So I thought this was just maybe awkwardly placed for her. I don't know. I think it was more just like I don't think it was very good casting. I don't know who could have played the character of Susan better, but I thought she did great for what she was given. Like Todd said, I don't think she was given that much to do in terms of big monologues or anything like that. I mean, we'll get onto Chris Cooper shortly, but for who Meryl Streep is, I thought he kind of carried her a little bit through some of the scenes. Maybe it just felt a bit pedestrian for her, perhaps. That's not like an over criticism of her or whatever. It was just like Todd opened it perfectly with. She was fine. Massey.
Yeah, it was a weird performance, and I think that wasn't helped by the film being such a strange film, and there's like a massive tonal shift sort of towards the end as well that kind of changes her character completely, which didn't sit properly with me, to be honest. It didn't feel like a Meryl Streep performance, which I think you're absolutely spot on where the cast is probably wrong there potentially. But yeah, it was. There was a couple of things. Todd absolutely spot on. I completely agree. I think when I wrote down as well when she sees a flower and says it's just a flower, like that was great. I thought it was fantastic. Her performance there, again, I suppose a bit of writing as well, but her performance there was excellent. There was a moment where I think she screams at, I think it's Donald. She calls it. She like screams, "You fat fuck," and the way that she like pronounces "fuck," like just that had me rolling. That was really good. But it was moments that were like, I think the whole performance was okay, but then moments that were better than okay, but seemed a lot better because it was sort of like at that sort of more level kind of performance. I thought so. She was fine. Getting a nominee for best actress support role, I thought that was wild. Like that's insane. And I didn't actually look to see when that was in her sort of like filmography college, so that's interesting here because I thought it was maybe more of like a legacy kind of thing, but I suppose it might have been for like her earlier kind of stuff. But I don't know how she deserves a nod for the best actress in support role for the Oscars, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I thought her performance was okay, was fine. Yeah, you said we'll obviously move on to the next sort of guy, which was Chris Cooper, someone we spoke about a couple of times in our episodes, as playing John LaRoche. What was your thoughts on him, Collie, Chris Cooper?
I thought he was brilliant, and it's funny. I'm pretty sure we talked about Adaptation in passing during our Sam Mendes episode when we were saying how good Chris Cooper was. And then I think we were like, "Oh, has he ever been nominated or won an Oscar or whatever?" And then we looked up this. I was like, "What the fuck is Adaptation?" But after watching it, like he's as good as Nick Cage is. I think he's the star of the show for me. I thought he was brilliant. Even just like the opening scene when he's in the courtroom and discussing, like, because you think he looks like this like redneck, doesn't know what he's talking about, kind of backwater kind of guy, and then he's just spouting off all these facts about horticulture and flowers and all that kind of stuff. It's just completely surprised, and I think he's great. And again, kind of what I was saying throughout the film, whenever he's interacting with Meryl Streep, especially like the kind of face-to-face stuff, I thought he absolutely carried her. I think he's class.
Absolutely.
And a well-deserved Oscar win, I would say.
Definitely, and especially looking at who he was up against as well. It's a decent thing. Christopher Walken, Catch What You Can, Ed Harris for The Hours, John C. Reilly for Chicago, and then Paul Newman, Road to Perdition as well.
The thing is, I looked at that and I was like, oh, I don't recall The Hours. Road to Perdition, obviously, we talked about, and Paul Newman's good in that. Like, don't get me wrong. Don't think I've seen Chicago for like 20 years or however long since it came out. And then Catch Me If You Can, Christopher Walken nominated for that. I was like, oh, really? Like, I don't know. I didn't feel Christopher Walken was in Catch Me If You Can enough to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor. So when you look at that, I think Chris Cooper's like head and shoulders above any of those other performances, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I think he was phenomenal. I think the way that he had like the two front teeth missing as well, it's added so much to character and like the like not just the character but the character of the character, if that makes sense. Like the way that he portrayed him, just by having something like a physical kind of change to his look, I thought made him so endearing, and the way that he spoke was super interesting, and I really loved watching. I think every time he was on the screen, even though, as you say, he looked like this sort of like redneck hillbilly guy that maybe in other films would be portrayed as like a sort of a bit of a laughing stock kind of thing, but he's like such a grounded guy in this. Yeah, I thought his performance was absolutely unbelievable, and as you say there, I think a very well deserved winner of the Oscar, and I love Chris Cooper. Todd, thoughts on Chris Cooper's performance?
No, I'm with you. Definitely deserving. I think it's good that like he ebbs and flows in terms of he's like the type of character that he is. That works really like the performance is solid throughout. Sorry, but like where his character. So when he's talking to the coppers, he's like really smooth about it all. Like he's really charismatic and suave. And then when he knows there's something wrong with Meryl Streep's character, he's almost like a child who's upset somebody and wants to kind of win them back round a little bit with the facts. And then like with the monologue about the pollinators and stuff like that, I thought was really cool as well. Like it just there's so many different facets to his character, and I agree about the two front teeth because, like you say, you just think that it adds to this messy, unkempt person who's not looked after himself for years, and they've just fallen out with addiction or decay or whatever, and it turns out it was a horrific accident that he's living with and stuff, and then he has to live with that physical side of things as well, which I thought was really cool. It was just again like seeing Diaz and Cusack as this mess. Like Cooper's always played these like uptight, well sort of groomed, army generals or whatever, or cop. Do you know what I mean? Like he's always well groomed. So yeah, it was weird to see, but really well played.
Good stuff. Okay, any other performances you want to talk about at all? Colin, anyone that stood out to you?
Not particularly. I mean, it's kind of pretty stacked cast when you look through it in terms of Brian Cox, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Tilda Swinton, and stuff like that. But they were kind of in passing more than anything. It was very much carried by the main three, or four technically, that we've discussed.
Yep. Todd, anyone?
Brian Cox was the one for me. Like that scene was probably the scene in the seminar, and then when he's talking to him in the bar, were like the two where I sort of sat up and was like, oh, that like where I was interested for 10 minutes. And it was because of that, like the word gravitas that Brian Cox brings to the role. I thought it was interesting that, again, I had to rewind it to write it down. You write a screenplay without conflict or confrontation, and you bore your audience to tears. And I was like, preach, brother. I'm sat here. Can we fast forward, please? Yeah, I thought it was really good. I liked maybe not so much the performance, but the inclusion of Judy Greer's character as like the waitress in the coffee shop, where like it might just say more about how desperate Charlie is, but that like he imagines taking her to the orchid show and that she's going to be so turned on by these flowers and stuff, and when he actually invites her, she's like goes over and talks to her mate about, look at that creep over there type thing. I thought that was really cool as well. They were me too, like extra standouts.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, it's a very sort of like writer heavy kind of film, but was there anything sort of like script wise that you guys enjoyed, didn't enjoy, sort of stood out to yourself? Collie, thoughts?
I think you touched on it maybe at the start. It just felt a bit messy, a bit all over the place, and that's possibly my understanding of it. I did try and watch a few YouTube videos of folk like analysing it and explaining it. It kind of went a bit over my head. Unlike what Todd said, though, I would like to go back to this at some point and maybe try and watch it after diving a bit deeper via YouTube or something like that. People explaining it to me at a higher level. So yeah, not too much to add on the script writing other than I probably didn't understand half of it.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I was exactly the same. It's weird looking at like the IMDb reviews and stuff because they obviously go back to like when it was first released as well, like 2003 and things. And there's a lot of people saying that like, it's such a smart film. Like some of the stuff they're saying, like if you don't get it, you're stupid. But I think I think a lot of time with films like this, maybe it does need a couple of watches to really sort of get it. I know certainly for me, like the one of the things that I found quite interesting, but it still was such a weird sort of tonal shift, but was basically as soon as Charlie got Donald in to help him finish the script, it then became the kind of more Hollywood sort of thing that Donald was writing, and there was like the sex scenes, the stakeouts, the drugs, the crocodiles attacking people, and so I thought that was an interesting thing. I still don't know if it worked, but I did think it was an interesting idea. Todd, thoughts on script wise?
Yeah, I think I like stories about like writing stories and like a process or whatever. I thought like it's cool. I just think, like you say, I think Collie said it in like the first two sentences. Disappears up his own backside like so quickly. Like the reason he's put like the twins in instead of just being Charlie Kaufman is like there's these two sides of me. Like I want to write like for me, but I also want to write for the money. And then like one of them, when I try and write this Hollywood film, he dies, and this other side of me's got to go on and carry on writing. Like that's how I read into it, but I just hate him for it. Like I just want him to do it better than what he did. The other thing I thought was interesting was that like Charlie Kaufman, the character's talking about writing this film about this book and how he doesn't want to turn it into this like mad thing, and the person who's, I think, is it Tilda Swinton, where they're like, oh, you the type of person who could turn it. No, it's the guy in the office who's talking about doing people up the arse. He keeps making those comments about I've done it, and he says about you're the type of person who could turn it into a mad story, and he's like, yeah, but I don't want to. And it's the same with Cage. I thought that was probably the most interesting bit about it. You've got an actor there who could turn this film up to an 11 and be ridiculous, and he hasn't, because he wants to give it some reverence and some like respect and stuff. But yeah, I thought it was just too far up its own ass for its own good. And I get that another watch might help me appreciate, understand, enjoy it more, but I'm not it was dull. It was just dull. So yeah, sorry.
No, fair enough. Anything else you guys want to touch on? Anything cinematography or director? I think we kind of spoke quite a bit about. Are you sure, Collie? Are you sure you don't want to talk more about adaptation?
Absolutely positive.
Okay, so ratings then. Todd, what did you give adaptation?
2.5.
Collie?
I give it 3.5.
Okay, and I was right in the middle of you two. As always, a sandwich. 3 stars from me for adaptation.
Yeah, and I kind of we talked about I think all of our ratings. It's for the performances more than anything.
Yeah, completely agree. Right, okay, we'll move on to the second last one in Spike Jonze's filmography. We're on to where did a Stewie. Where the wild things are. Where the wild things are.
Sorry, why did you describe it as second last rather than third? Sorry, that just completely knocked me off there. Because technically it is second last, but why have you not just said third?
I'm a pessimist. That's why.
Okay.
So yeah, where the wild things are. The third film in his filmography. So yearning for escape and adventure, a young boy runs away from home and sails to an island filled with creatures that take him in as their king. Todd, what was your initial thoughts on Where the Wild Things Are?
It was first watch, and I don't know if I'll ever go back to it. I don't know if it's ever something I'll ever want to watch again, because it falls into this weird middle category of it's a kid's film, but it's really not a kid's film. Like there's so much like existentialism to it. Like it was interesting. That's the only way I can put it, because I enjoyed it to an extent. Again, I think performances wise, the performances were better than the film itself. Loved how they made it and stuff, and I'm sure like with the puppets and the combination of the CGI and stuff. It was good. It was good. It was interesting, but I can't go any further than that, I suppose.
Fair enough. Collie?
Yeah, it was a rewatch for me. I'd maybe seen it 2 or 3 times prior to this, but it had been a while. Really enjoyed it. It's a lot heavier, and it's definitely not a kids' film, which we can get into in a little bit when we talk about like what the studio's expectations and stuff were. But yeah, no, really enjoyed it.
Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is actually, again, this is a rewatch for me. It's the only one that I'd seen before. I'd actually got some Blu-ray when it first came out because it looked like quite like a fun little film and stuff. And when I first watched it, I don't think I got it. As in, like, I didn't understand it. So it was interesting kind of going at it with an analytical brain sort of this time. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think there was more that I enjoyed, or it sort of all came together a bit more towards the end. But yeah, I did really enjoy the film. The film going through, and I thought it was such a, as you say, like for looking like a kids film, but being so heavy and having such underlying themes. I think it's really really well made and really interesting. Absolutely. Okay, so let's kind of go into performances now. The sort of main thing is obviously the kid, and then the wild things. So what was your thoughts? I know, Todd, I know you like a child actor. Oh, wait, that sounds weird. I know you in
Yeah, let's rephrase that one.
Todd, what are your thoughts on Max?
Typically, I am not a fan of child actors. I think that's no. He did a really good job, but I hated the character, and I think that was a problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, so from the start, what is it, like play with fire, get burned type thing? I was like, why is he getting upset that these kids have come and like smashed his igloo and that, when he's the one who's like, they were just having a good time, and he's just a bit of a brat. But like you say, he plays that really well, so I can't have an issue with it. And I think because obviously, again, I sort of got that it's his imagination, it's all in his head, because they're all different like parts of his life, and like they represent that, like that he just gets into it, like he accepts that these monsters are just things, like they are just part of his life type thing. So like when he dives on that, is it KW? When he,
KW, yeah.
KW, sorry. When he dives on her and like just immediately starts sticking his finger up her nose and stuff, and it's just like he plays into that character that doesn't give a shit, that's a little bit of a brat so well. So I had to kind of separate, a bit like the Babadook, in terms of everybody hates that kid, but it's a fantastic performance. I hated him, but it was really good. It was really solid from him. And to act alongside these puppets that obviously weren't Immortan, was solid as well. That was really good.
Yep. Collie?
Yeah, kind of similar to what Todd says. Like, Max as a character is quite complex, I feel. He is a bit bratty, and you want him to, obviously, you're rooting for him to grow, which he does by the end of the film. But the Max Records, who plays Max, I thought it was a great performance, and kind of what Todd touched on at the end there was acting with these, obviously, actors in big suits. But a bit of background about the film was that they were originally all going to be animatronic, but then they were too heavy, so they had to remove all of that, and then they had to CGI them. So even probably as a young actor preparing for this film, he was like, right, I'm going to have to act against, like, big robot faces or whatever, and then having to change that to how they did end up having to do it with CGI post. I think speaks to how talented he is. So I thought it was a great performance in summation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I really enjoyed like I know you're saying there, Todd, about like how he was just kind of, the other folk were just having fun with him at the start, and like, he kind of kicked off and stuff. I saw that a lot as like him being immature and being unable to regulate his emotions and things as a kid, whereas the slightly older kids had kind of been through that sort of phase in their life, and I thought he played that really well. I thought it was a really interesting, quite a layered performance actually for a kid. So I was, yeah, I thought he was excellent in this. I really did, and as both of you touched on there, being able to act without sort of like proper scene partners, I suppose. Much like Nick Cage with himself, I think that shows a lot of talent. So yeah, fair play to Max Records. Shout out Max Records. So obviously the sort of like the next sort of like group of actors, I suppose, are the voices of the wild things. So just to quickly run through them, we've got James Gandolfini as Carol, we've got Paul Dano as Alexander, Catherine O'Hara as Judith, Forrest Whitaker as Ira, Michael Berry Jr. as the Bull, Chris Cooper as Douglas, Lauren Ambrose as KW. So guys, what were your thoughts on those performances? Was there anything that that stood out for yourselves? Was there any ones that kind of were maybe slightly above or kind of stood out for you? Collie, what's your thoughts?
I mean, Carol is the main wild thing, I guess, when it comes to interacting with Max, and hearing James Gandolfini was really nice. Like loved him in The Sopranos and various other film projects, and obviously he passed away relatively young, so we don't have him anymore. But to hear him was really, really cool. I thought, especially when he's talking to Max later on and being like, about not being the king but being the king and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. I just feel that there's a very nurturing kind of, because Carol's kind of immature like Max, which is, I guess, is kind of the story of, or kind of the background of the story, is that these two characters need to grow up, essentially. So the interaction between him and Max was good, but also between him and KW, and the way he's like, what's he? Is it stamping or sitting on his head or stamping on his head when they're having the dirt fight later on? He's like, no, he didn't mean to do it, and you did, and the kind of the petulant toys out the pram stuff there, I thought was really good, and all of the actors, their ability to convey, I thought, emotion and all that between, well, just using their voice, I thought was fantastic, and it's stacked. I mean, Paul Dano, like, how good of an actor is he? And he was just voicing one of the Wild Things, and Forrest Whitaker, Catherine, like, absolutely amazing.
Yep. Todd?
Yeah, James Gandolfini immediately for me. Like you say, it's nice to hear it, and I think it's nice to hear him in like that sensitive. I don't, aside from In the Loop, and then obviously The Sopranos. Like, I can't really tell you much else that I've seen him in, like, off the top of my head. But it was just nice to hear that, like you say, that nurturing side, that softer side. I thought Catherine O'Hara as Ira was really cool. Like that. Was she? No,
Judith.
She wasn't Ira. That was for Judith. Thank you. Because she was the aggressive one, wasn't she? She was the difficult one, let's say. And I thought she was brilliant as that, like that, just up and down. But like you say, I think it lends to the script as well, like how natural like the lines were and stuff. Like they were having conversations. There was one I wrote down about about what have you been eating? I think he like picks him up and he's like, "What have you been eating?" He's like, "Rocks." And it's like, it's a tiny shitty throwaway line that's delivered like with such good timing and such like sincerity. Like it works. You believe them. You believe them straight away. And like you said, like, I love that Paul Dano's character was sort of like the Donnie from Big Lebowski type character, where like, you know, every time he tries to talk, he's shut down. I thought that was lovely. Yeah, like you say, Collie, they do so much with so little. Like the facial animation's really good for, you know, especially for, you know, it's aged well. I don't think there was many times where I was like taken out of it type thing CGI wise, but it was the voices that really did it and give it that emotional impact.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. Yeah, I mean, James Gandolfini, of course. Like, for me, like, that whole relationship between him and Max was unbelievable. And as you say, Colin, it was like the two. It's almost like they were the two like main that needed to grow up and needed to kind of get their selves in check and stuff. And even just that final sort of scene where when Max is sailing off and Carol's like sprinting towards him and just like the eyes and stuff and like like that got me. Like, not a lot of films get me these days, or some do, but some don't. But like this one was like, I was straight away like just going like the howling when he's leaving as well, and they're all howling. Like I thought it was such like a touching thing. Like
just to touch on that, and we'll get on to obviously like not just the acting performances, but I thought the score throughout this was amazing, and that score in the scene when he's running and he's howling and stuff. I was the same. I this was one of the other films I watched, this and John Malkovich on the train to London, and I'm like this, like just looking out the window, like just not wanting to see anybody. And then so that was on the way down, and the way back up, I watched Past Lives. And at the end of that, I was like, why have I watched this? Why have I watched these films on the train? These are not for like public consumption. But yeah, I that bit especially, and 100% what we've all said about how Max and Carol need to be the ones to grow up. But that's the whole conversation between KW and Max when she'd put him in her tummy or whatever to hide him, and she's like, "Oh, we can't really do much while Carol's having his tantrums," and that's when Max obviously realizes what he's putting his mum through, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, absolutely phenomenal from them. Any other actors you want to talk about there? I mean, I just, again, quick shout out to Mark Ruffalo. showing up as a
Yeah,
tiny,
so
tiny little.
I forgot he was. I forgot he was in it, but I thought Catherine Keener as his
Yeah.
mum was really good.
Yeah, she was great.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, yeah. So I mean, in sort of like script wise, anything that you guys wanted to chat about with this, the story, the script there. I know I've kind of touched on the score a little bit, but was there anything you wanted to speak about in terms of the actual story or anything there? Collie, was there anything that stood out to you?
I mean, it's kind of an outlier in terms of Spike Jonze's filmography, in that it's a quote unquote kids film, but he makes it his own. And there was, from reading a bit of the like IMDb about it, the studio were kind of disappointed and they were threatening to reshoot the whole thing when he put up obviously his like first draft of the film or whatever to them, because it's quite dark and it's supposed to be a kids film, and I think they found like a happy medium. It did end up making money, I don't think. Which isn't always about like a reflection of a good or a bad thing of a film, but it was just interesting that of all his films, this had the chance to be probably the most mainstream, but it didn't because he made it his own. But that speaks to maybe how he's like, no, this is my vision for it. This is how I want to be, even though it's a quote unquote kids book, because it is really quite dark and scary at times, especially when he first gets to the island and stuff, like when it's nighttime and that. Yeah, no, I thought he did a really good job, and it was good to see something different, especially after adaptation. Just a bit more, a bit more. I was going to say family friendly, but a bit more like viewer friendly, I guess. You don't have to think too much about it. It's a bit more mainstream in terms of stories and lessons learned and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Todd?
Yeah, like what you're saying there, Collie. Just to follow on from that, like you can dive into this film. You can look at like each monster being like a different part that Max has to work on and all that, or you can just see it as a little kid who goes on an adventure, learns a little bit about himself, and comes back home. Like you could take it as literally as that. It was so weird. It was so creepy. Like when he pulls his arm off. And hits him with it, and he's like, "What did he say? Like that was my favorite arm." And there's just sand pouring out of this arm, like it. And I thought the pylon as well was. It started off as this nice little moment where we're all jumping on top of each other, and oh, isn't it nice? And then they start just like slinging each other about, and like it is really, really like creepy in the best possible way. Like that isn't a bad thing at all. But I like how it balanced the sort of the weird and the natural with like the really sort of poignant stuff as well. How can we be scared of a tiny little thing like the sun? Which I thought was like, that was lovely. And again, that moment between Carol and Max was cool. But I just thought like everything about it was so well made. And the more I'm thinking about it now, like I probably should have given it a higher score. Like the dog in the desert, like every time they were on the beach, it was gorgeous. The snow. The scene with the snow was phenomenal. Like it was just a beautiful film. It was well written. There's so much to touch on that I think we could be here for days. And then just like you say, the craft of it, the craft of going right. We can't do the animatronics. What are we going to do? We're going to make these really big puppets, and you're going to get in it, and worked really well. Massey, I don't know if there's anything else you want to.
Yeah, no. I think we've kind of covered a lot of stuff there. I mean. We kind of I know Collie kind of touched on a little bit there, so dive towards the end there. But the score by Carano, who was I don't know if they're married to Spike Jonze at the time or were certainly dating at the time. I thought like the music that went along with it was such like a lot of time it was kind of like happy, kind of upbeat sort of almost childlike music, but it fit things so perfectly. And even when things took a turn for the worse, the score did so well as well. But it's one of those scores that you could listen to and like listen to as an album and just enjoy yourself listening to it. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal and worked really well. So yeah, I thought that was great. Anything else we want to speak about with Where the Wild Things Are? Collie, Todd, anything else you guys want to touch on? Or I think we've.
Oh, I'm good to score it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so Collie, what did you give Where the Wild Things Are on Letterboxd?
4 stars.
Perfect. I did the same, 4 stars. So we obviously enjoyed it. Todd, what do you think of Where the Wild Things Are?
Yeah, I went for 3 stars. But like I say, after talking through it, I've realised the error of my ways. Might have to watch it. Might have to watch it again at some point.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so we will move on to the fourth film in Spike Jonze's filmography, and the final one as well. We're going to be talking about Her. So in the near future, a lonely writer develops an unlikely relationship with an operating system designed to meet his every need. Collie, first thoughts on Her?
I love this film. I think it's brilliant. Top to bottom, performance wise, it's great. I think the story and the lessons in it are really good as well. I think this is Spike Jonze's best work, if not equal to Malkovich.
Mm-hmm. Todd?
Yeah, it's a perfect film. I see it as. I think he could have gone so many different ways with the concept, and he went the right way with it. It could have felt like a Black Mirror episode, and it didn't. It felt fresh. Like, this is a rewatch for me, and it doesn't get old. Like you say, Collie, performances are out of this world. Execution, cinematography, it's just such a beautiful film as well. Yeah, fantastic. Massey?
Yeah, it was my first watch, and this was one of the reasons why I wanted to choose Spike Jonze, because I'd heard so much about Her. A couple of times I'd went to watch it and just been like, I can't believe it right now. But choosing Spike Jonze, knowing I had to then watch this film, I'm so glad I did. Unbelievable. Like, just, as you say, Todd, I see it as a perfect film as well. I think it's just absolutely phenomenal. Like, it looks great. It's got an incredible story behind it. Performances are wonderful. It's heartwarming. It's devastating. Just incredible. And when I realized that it was Hoyt van Hoytma as the cinematographer, I was like, right, okay, yeah, we're in for a good time here. So yeah, absolutely unbelievable. So I mean, talking about the performances, of course, we have Joaquin Phoenix as the main guy, Theodore, in this film. What were your thoughts on his performance, Collie?
So I just, because I forgot that this was a first watch for you, can you go first on a few of these things? Because I feel like me and Todd have watched it a couple of times. So if it's new to you and it's fresh to you, can you maybe talk about what you liked about Joaquin Phoenix, and then maybe we can just add on the back of that? Because I always feel that you're at the end of most of the conversations, and then it's like, if you've got one or two things, that's great, but I don't want to feel like we're taking over it.
No, that's fair. I like hearing your dulcet tones. So, yeah, no, Joaquin Phoenix. I thought he was so vulnerable from the start. Like, you obviously follow him from what he's doing. He's writing letters, or handwrittenletters.com, to like families and things, and you can tell that he's like a sort of a romantic, or a hopeless romantic, I suppose. But yeah, he's just completely vulnerable, and you're just drawn to him the whole time. He's so endearing. Like, when he's talking to his operating system in the with like the earpluggy thing, and he's just like walking through the streets of this sort of like futuristic place, and he's just smiling away and just having normal conversations. It just feels so real, the relationship that he portrays with Samantha's the name of the operating system. It just feels so real, the way that he has a discussion with her, and the way that we see him come from, again, the sort of like the honeymoon phase of where he's in this like loving relationship with his operating system, and then when things start to go a bit south, and he kind of sort of goes down with it when when the operating system decide to leave. I think it's just so devastating to see him there, because he's, throughout the film as well, he's shunning relationships from real life people for this operating system. I just think like the way that he plays it is just absolutely unbelievable. It's so real, and it's so like authentic, I suppose, is the way to look at his performance. But yeah, I thought he was just unbelievable in this. Collie?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird talking about Joaquin Phoenix in maybe the last 10, 15 years of his career, because a lot of his roles, I feel, are similar-ish. A lot of them are kind of outcasts, or a bit weird, or just out there. And I think Hers, where he perfected it. And it's sometimes when I watch his performances now, it kind of feels like a bit parody-esque of this. Like, I feel you could look at his character in this and then look at like Arthur Fleck, and Arthur Fleck's just like a more deranged version of this. And oh god, what was the film? What was the film? The shit film that we watched? Wait a minute.
Always afraid.
Was afraid, and that was just like this, like turn up to 11 kind of thing. Standout scene for me in this that I really liked, especially ones that are just Joaquin in it, is the one on the beach, and they're just sitting and talking, and they're just describing stuff, and then it cuts to him just lying on his side, because at first he just sits down and then he's just lying on his side, and it's just, it feels completely believable. And I guess we're living in the world where there is Siri and there is all this AI stuff, because I recommended this to a friend in work who hasn't seen it yet, and I was like, it's probably weird watching this now, and it kind of obviously you're experiencing this, Massey, that where technology's probably developed between when the film came out to now, it's probably went leaps and bounds, and it's probably closer and closer to the technology that we have in this. But yeah, his interactions with Amy Adams I thought were really good and authentic. And speaking on Spike Jonze, he locked them in a room like for an hour or two each day when they were filming and just made them talk to each other. And they both credit that with how they seem like real friends in it, because they were becoming real friends in real life. Obviously, the kind of flashback stuff with Rooney Mara, and then the massive blow up argument about, you know, when it comes out that he's fallen in love with this AI system essentially, and she just loses it. That relationship feels genuine, and then they subsequently married and had kids in real life. So the connections I feel in this film all feel genuine because they were genuine, or have become genuine after the fact. So just, I know we're talking about Joaquin Phoenix here, but the kind of the culture that Spike Jonze seems to have developed around this film compared to even just some of his others is just one of really making sure the actors are getting what they're doing. And I think Joaquin Phoenix nails it. I think for me, this is probably, without looking through his filmography like film by film and analysing it, this is probably my favourite performance by him.
Yep. Todd?
Yeah, I mean, you've summed it up perfectly. Like, I think the only other thing I would add is how much he changes, and it's so drastic. You know, when he's talking to them, he's looking through the chat rooms before he gets Samantha, and he's looking through the chat rooms and he talks to like the dead cat girl, like, and the way that he's like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and he puts on this like suave like sort of persona, and then the second he's like, send message, and he goes back to that sort of like sad sack, like pathetic, and like. And then when he goes on the date with Olivia Wilde's character, and again, you can see it's all forced and it feels really fucking weird. But then when he's talking to Samantha and when he's talking to Amy Adams, you can tell who the real relationships in his life are. And I thought that was really well done. And I also wrote down, Tashed Phoenix is sad Phoenix, because like in that first sort of 20 minutes where like you see the flashbacks with Rooney Mara and he's having a really good time and he's clean shaven, and then it goes back to him just laid on his bed in his room and he's got his tash. So but obviously I was hoping at some point, I know he didn't because it's a rewatch, but that he would shave his tash off once he got happy again. I thought that might have been like a thing, but it wasn't. Yeah, he's brilliant. He does it, what he does really well. I agree, I've never really thought about it, that like it is just like a play on what he did in Her, because every single film, even that Come On, it's worth a watch. But again, he just plays like the sort of the outcast, the loner.
I thought even Napoleon. I thought the way that he plays Napoleon is kind of sad Napoleon. Mm-hmm. Give him a tash and he's from Her, you know.
Napoleon.
Theodore Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah. Where like, and before it, things like Johnny Cash, where he, you know, in Walk the Line, it totally different. So yeah, great shout. But yeah, I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, I'd even say like The Master, which was like the year before this. It's, I think if you looked at his acting thing, like The Master, he's a certain type of guy, and then Her and thereafter, I feel like, and that's not like a drag on him because I think he's a really good actor, but I feel like he's not a one-trick pony either. I'm trying to say it like constructively without saying that, but
like, what he does well. Like,
yeah, exactly.
He's
I'd love for him to do another like Commodus Gladiator type baddie role. I think that would be cool. think that would be a bit. But then he'd probably play the baddie as like a pathetic loser kind of baddie as well. Like, so
With a
I
tash.
don't know, but like I really really enjoy him as an actor. But it's just, and this is peak Joaquin, like I said. But hereafter, it's kind of a bit more of a parody of this, I would say. Like I just feel like Ridley Scott for Napoleon's like, oh, you know that film like Her, and you were like really sad and stuff in it. Go just be like that for Napoleon. But you're a general guy now, you know. So anyway, sorry, I digress.
No, I totally agree. So thinking about obviously Joaquin Phoenix and his performance, and then obviously across from Scarlett Johansson as like a voice. There's a load that she does really well as well. Like it must be so hard acting to essentially a microphone, and being able to kind of make yourself be in the scene but not be in the scene kind of thing. But I thought her voice was like perfectly fit. Like even just her normal speaking voice was absolutely great for the AI. But then like there's moments where again kind of towards the end specifically when the AIs decide to kind of all get together and leave, you can like hear the pain in her voice. And even when she's talking to him about how she's talking to like heaps of other folk at the same time and stuff as well. Like she doesn't want to tell him these things, but you can tell that she knows she has to. And then when they're having a conversation, like you say, at the beach as well, like again, how Joaquin's performance was so authentic. Hers on her side just felt as authentic as well, even though she wasn't there and she wasn't on screen. I thought she was just like unbelievable, like to do something like that. What was your thoughts, Collie, on Scarlett Johansson's performance in this film?
So what's interesting, and I don't know if you heard about it, or read about it, but she only came on board post production. So Samantha Morton recorded the whole dialogue with Joaquin like throughout the whole film, and she just came on and re-recorded all the lines, which I didn't realize until I was reading up on it for this podcast. So the fact that Scarlett Johansson had to like recreate this chemistry between her and Joaquin, and they never acted together, or maybe they practiced like or whatever. But the fact that she came in and recorded it post, I think is amazing because it feels so believable. It feels in the moment. Going back to that beach scene, even the first time that they quote unquote like sleep together and stuff, just it seems like a genuine connection. And there's just every so often you're reminded in the film, but it's an AI. It's not like, but he's not. It's not like, oh, he's on the phone to a woman. It's like, but it's an AI. And it's hard even as a viewer to lose yourself in that kind of blend. So for Theodore to be in that relationship and him to be living it and stuff, it is difficult, and it must be difficult. But yeah, I think she's amazing, and the fact that Spike Jonze used her in this and Sofia Coppola used her in Lost in Translation, both of which are semi-autobiographical about their marriage and divorce, is interesting. And Scarlett Johansson's like this not an au pair, but you know, like in the middle kind of thing.
She's basically the person that they hired to have sex with them in the film. She's that person, but for their relationship.
Yes, is it a surrogate kind of person?
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, Todd, sorry, Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, like the bit you said about the girl being on the phone, like I think you lose. I lost that connection so many times that it was an AI, and you just, you know, especially because like headphones now, and the headphones won't have been like that in, you know, at that time. I can't believe that she didn't get an Oscar nod for this, because I think what she does with her voice is better than what a lot of actresses and stuff actors and actresses are given in general, just being on screen. She's so believable, and I think Scarlett Johansson's a phenomenal actress, and I don't think she gets the credit she deserves sometimes because of some of the roles that she plays. So because she's great in the Avengers, I have no issue with her as Black Widow, but like because she's in these big Hollywood blockbusters, because she's in things like Ghost in the Shell and, you know, those kinds of things, I think people forget just how solid she is. Like the little, I know he calls her out on it later on, but like the little breaths that she takes that are so natural, but obviously aren't natural to this AI. And the other thing, sorry, was, you know, when he has her in the pocket and they walking around talking about the couples. That scene for me was like, she was next to him. She was stood next to him the whole time, and I felt that, and I love that. Like, at first, I felt like that was seeing it through Joaquin Phoenix's eyes, and then slowly but surely going, no, that's probably what the camera sees. Like, you're probably seeing what she's not even seen it because she's a fucking AI, but you know what I mean. And I think she portrayed that really well. But that she doesn't run over. She's not. There are times, like you say, where you're reminded that she's an AI, where like you're like, oh yeah, she's not human, and you get that from her performance, which I thought was solid. Yeah, just again, perfectly done.
Yep. So obviously we kind of touched a bit on Amy Adams and Rooney Mara. Amy Adams obviously being his like real life, one of the few real life relationships that he has. I thought she was great as well. When we're going through the breakup of her relationship with her husband, but then also what you said there, Collie, about the fact that like Spike Jonze put them in a room and obviously got them to speak for 1 or 2 hours a day. You can tell, again, using the word, you can tell it's an authentic relationship as well, but in a potentially different sort of way. It's not necessarily romantic; it is potentially more platonic. But you can tell they have that relationship between each other. What do you think about her being in this film and what she did with what she was given as well, Collie?
Yeah, I thought Amy Adams was great, especially later on when Theodore's talking to her about being unsure about his relationship with Samantha. Sorry, and she just like, well, if essentially she's like, if it makes you happy, then stay happy, kind of thing. Don't overthink it. Don't do that, because by this point they'd both been quote unquote happily married and then subsequently split up. So she's going through the same thing, like inversely to him. And yeah, authentic's the best thing to say about it. Some of their jokes and stuff when they're getting it on and off the elevator. What does she say? It's something about playing video games or something like that. I can't remember the quote that she says to him, but it immediately cuts to him going, and he's sitting in his apartment playing that like little wandering game. And then I think it's that scene that the little blob guy comes up and he's like, "Fuck you, fuckhead," and stuff. And I thought that was proper funny. But no, back to Amy Adams, I thought she was great. It's funny, she was nominated for American Hustle this year. Whereas I'd probably argue that this is more of a nuanced performance, but again, that would maybe be supporting rather than lead. So yeah, it's kind of weird, but it just shows that American Hustle, like, all right film, great performances by her in it, whereas this is like an amazing film and an amazing performance by her. Just completely different.
Yep. Todd?
Yeah, I was like, because of their friendship and because of Amy Adams' performance, it wasn't anything else. I was happy for them not to be in a relationship. Like, I felt like what they had was so authentic. Again, that's the word to use, and it was down to how she portrayed it. Like you say, those little jokes that didn't feel like tacked on, they didn't feel flirtatious. They just felt like two people who like needed each other at that time, and have obviously needed each other at different points in their lives. Happy to let them get on with each other. I love the reveal scene that like she's talking to an OS, and like, and I know obviously in that, the at the beginning when he's got his headphone in and he's talking to like a very basic OS, and he's like next, and then he looks at the pictures of that pregnant woman and all that kind of thing, and everybody else is around him doing the same thing. Like, obviously talking to OSs is a common thing, but I didn't get the feeling that what was happening to him was a common thing. I thought this was just an isolated incident for him until she reveals that. And like, that blew me away, because then it's like, you could have 100 films set in this like this version of our world, which isn't. It's set in 2025. I'd have a bit of a Google about that, but like, we're not too, like you say, we're not too far off. We're not far off people having like chat bots and stuff like that. So yeah, that scene really got me. Just her sincerity and like say, her acceptance of the fact that like, yeah, he's sleeping with, like, it's that gossipy sort of, do you have sex with it, and he's like, gentleman doesn't tell type thing, which I thought was really cool as well. Yeah, she was phenomenal. I would have had her up there, like you say, in comparison to American Hustle, which is a film I haven't watched in a long time, but I would definitely put this above it, and I would put this performance above hers in that.
Yep. Okay. Any other people that kind of jumped out to you guys during this film? I know the cast almost spoke about Rooney Mara a little bit there with like the main sort of thing that she gets to do is the scene when they're at the table getting properly divorced. I thought she was really good there. But was there any other people that jumped out to you guys in this film at all? Todd?
I think it was really cool. It's probably more of a Spike Jonze thing than a Rooney Mara thing. Although her performances in it were really good, is that like we hear Samantha, but we don't see her. And for a lot of the time, we only hear Rooney Mara in that one scene. Everything else is physical. It's all like put over with the score, which I thought was beautiful as well. That was nominated, wasn't it? So I thought she did really well. And then I loved seeing Chris Pratt being like the sort of ever so like he's not quite the Andy from Parks and Rec, but he's not quite Star-Lord either. Like he's somewhere in between those two characters with the Tash as well. Maybe he's sad too. I don't know. But I thought that was really cool, and like their little like daft relationship. And then I had to go on IMDb just to have a look, and you could tell it was Brian Cox as the OS that Samantha was talking to at the end. That was cool. But the one that I found was Kristen Wiig. Is it Wiig? Is that how you say it?
Wiig, isn't it?
From is it just Wig? Oh,
I think it's just Wig, yeah.
Wig. As she's Dead Cat Lady, which I thought was really cool as well. Like that's just a nice little. And Spike Jonze is the little blue guy.
Yeah.
Fuck you, buddy. Which I thought was like he's obviously just enjoying that. Like they were the only other things that like performance wise I wanted to touch on.
Yeah. Collie, anyone else?
No, I thought just all the cameos and Brian Cox coming back as well. I thought was quite nice. And just talking about the score and stuff, it was Arcade Fire essentially that did the score and stuff for it, which I thought was pretty sick. And yeah, they were nominated, but no, nothing really to add apart from that. That it was cool. Like it was Kristen Wiig and Spike Jonze, the little blob guy that was swearing at him and stuff. No, it was spot on.
That's a bit
even just Olivia Wilde as the blind date. I thought in the little that she had as well was good.
Yeah, I was gonna say it just adds a bit of levity, doesn't it? Like the in what is otherwise a sad film, you just have like these folk popping up and swearing at him, or
it's even when like the little alien thing that Spike Jonze is like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
And it's he's obviously talking to Samantha at the same time.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. I mean, anything else with the film do you want to talk about? I mean, kind of touched a little bit on cinematography by obviously Hoyt van Hoytma. I thought the film looked wonderful. It was so well shot. But was there anything else that you guys wanted to discuss about the film? We're happy enough to kind of take it from there.
I would just say let him. Like, I really hope he carries on writing his own stuff because I love being John Malkovich. I thought it was fantastic, but this to me is on a different level. Like that last monologue, and I'm chuffed we didn't get a Samantha face. You know when he's like hugging in the snow, and like we didn't get even an imagined face. Like it was just that presence was there. I just think it's really clever. Like I just think it's really well done. And like I said at the beginning, he could have gone full Black Mirror with it. It only really turns into sci-fi in the last sort of 20 minutes, and even then, it's not like hard sci-fi over the top. The dead cat thing I had to write down because I've heard that phrase used a lot. Like, oh, it's a dead cat. You know, they throwing a dead cat out. Have you never heard? So like a lot in like politicians throw out a dead cat, and it's like they say something shocking to distract you. And I like the fact that this woman, and I thought that was like I had to Google it because I've only ever heard it before, but like so her being that distraction from like because that felt out of left field. Like I know there's weirdos on the internet, but that was properly strange. I just like I say, I just thought it was a really really clever script, really well shot. Just let him go on his own, let him do his own thing. Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, because he won the Oscar for the screenplay, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, doke. Shall we go into ratings then? Todd, what do you rate it on Letterboxd?
5 stars.
Collie?
5 stars.
Yeah, 5 stars for me as well. Yeah, unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Okay, doke. So, shall we go through a quick rankings of his films as well then? I've wrote mine down, so I don't have to do too much thinking. So, Collie, what was your rankings of Spike Jonze's films?
So from bottom to top, it's Adaptation, Where the Wild Things Are, being John Malkovich, and Her.
Todd?
Yeah, exactly. Adaptation. Where the Wild Things Are, being John Malkovich.
Same. Yeah, Adaptation last, Where the Wild Things Are, being John Malkovich and Her. Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be, well, not universal, but I think that's probably going to be quite a lot of people's rankings for Spike Jonze. But yeah, I'm really glad that we're able to kind of go through his films and discuss that.
So I'm just on Letterboxd quickly there. I'm laughing at the review for Her that you liked, Massey. And it's the biggest achievement of Her is that it makes you feel sorry for a guy who's dated Rooney Mara, Olivia Wilde, Amy Adams, and Scarlett Johansson's voice.
Brilliant. Okay, so that is our Spike Jonze episode. Shall we get one of you guys to tell us who we're doing in the next episode? Collective Unit,
Yes.
would you like to?
Yes, I have chosen who we're going to be doing on the next episode. So we're going to be doing potential future Bond director Steve McQueen. So we're going to be covering 5 of his films: Hunger, Shame, 12 Years a Slave, Widows, and Blitz. Blitz, which is just out in cinemas like now. So yeah, just get in to see it as soon as you can if you're wanting to listen along with that.
Definitely. Absolutely. I'm excited for that one, especially Widows. So yes, again, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. If you're watching on YouTube, as I said at the start, please remember to like, subscribe, follow us, pop a comment down below as well about what you think about any Spike Jonze films that you've seen, and of course go back and look at our other films, other episodes where we spoke about the different types of films and things, and comment on them as well and let us know what your thoughts are. It always helps, but we do appreciate your support. So thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next one where we're talking about Mr. Steve McQueen. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
See you in a bit.